recording here. So now I'm starting the recording. And yeah, it's great to see everyone for this new session of our course. And we also wanted to, before we jump into where we have been, before we jump into where we want to go, just to kind of go through a little bit through the different sessions that we already have covered, and just to see the trajectory of where we're going. That in itself is helpful, but it is also helpful for the particular thing that we want to talk about today, which is process consciousness. Because it shows that even things like this course, there's a development, there's a trajectory kind of pulled and developed by our intention to go somewhere. And just by seeing that, I started to talk about the field consciousness as we come on screen, and the field consciousness was also the first topic that we covered. And it's very essential for our emergent dialogue process to be aware of this field, this interrelational field, and to, as you know, to make the distinction between an interpersonal dialogue and intersubjective dialogue. When in the intersubjective dialogue there is an awareness of the field in its whole gestalt, in its wholeness. And this is something that we are not so used to pay attention to, and that's part of the reason why we do really emphasize this in our course. And do you want to?
Sure. And then one important position or stance that one takes toward the field, or towards this space that between us, is that of unknowing, meaning not that we instantly become stupid and don't know anything, but that we allow space for that which we don't know, that which we can't pin down, be on top of, an aspect of consciousness and being consciousness conscious is of being aware of the radical openness that is present in consciousness. That consciousness is an openness to I just call it an openness to that is between us when we pay attention to it, and what and that takes us beyond the concepts of our mind. It takes us beyond it takes us beyond ourselves, which is why that moves then into transindividuation, because it calls us to be holding all the things that we already know so well in abeyance, meaning to the side, letting that drift behind us, and having trust in that which is that we are most deeply in together, which is consciousness, which is life, which is the life process itself.
Yeah, and the next two sections that we covered were about transindividuation, and we made the point how we really have to honor the individuation process as being citizens of the 21st century, and honor our responsible identity as where we are in our uniqueness, but that we can take responsibility for something that is not only us in our separate self sense, but something that goes beyond us. That's what transindividuation means. And there, in one of our sessions, we really emphasized the reality of prior unity. And that's also, again and again, something that's worthwhile to contemplate and to just give a moment for it to realize, okay, we are sitting here at our different screens, computers, but there's something where we, as conscious beings, as beings that are able to hold consciousness, have never been separated. There's something where unity is first. And that's quite something to really allow this in and to see each other and see each other in our uniqueness, in our different places, and also let in that there's something that we don't have to come together. That's the prior of the prior unity. We don't have to come together in it. We have to realize that there's something we have never been separated in. That's a different starting point. It's not a unity that we have to create. It's a unity that we have to realize. And I find it also every time very revealing how it changes my relationship when I really focus on the fact of seeing all of you, all of us, and I'm really paying attention to that fact that yes, it's you and you and you and you and me and you, and there's something that is a prior unity that holds us, that is us.
And this whole being able to develop one's sensing capacities, to hold that not as an idea, like cool idea, that's kind of nice, but to be working with this as from one's experience. And we recommend, as we've said a number of times, as a meditation as a practice of developing the strength of one's capacity to hold both the field and one's transindividuated sensing and self-sense. So a little distracted, yeah. And that in this sort of recognition of the fact that there is non-separation before anything, before we exist, there is non-separation. That we are here together, and at the most fundamental level, that is a very deep and subtle level of awareness, that there is nothing that divides us. That from that place, holding that deeply as our own ground, that we can become aware of and make a distinction between aligning with our own personal motivations and ideas and thoughts and agendas, and becoming curious and open to a shared intention of a group that is looking to explore what can emerge between it. A group in which there is a shared intention to enter into a space of a space where something new can emerge. And obviously the potential for something new to emerge has to arise out of our letting go of the identities. And when I say letting go, I don't mean just simply forgetting about them, but loosening the grip of our identities, our prior positions, our everything that we know, letting that be a much looser relationship, so that we can meet in a common intention to discover what is possible between us.
Which is kind of really the transition point to where we want to go today, talking about process consciousness, because it has a lot to do with where does this, whatever this is that we are together in, want to go, and what is my participation in this wanting to go somewhere. But maybe before we go there, I would love to just hear a little back how people feel, where we have come in the last courses. If there are questions, if there's something. I don't want to spend too much time, because on one hand, I would like to spend much time on this, but I always know that then there's not much time to where we want to go today. But I would love to hear from you. I think we have covered, there were 4 sessions that we had until now, and there was a certain directionality in where we went, and there are some of our foundations we really covered again for the people who are here, not for the first time. And I would like to hear from you. How is it going? Where are you going with this? Are there some remarks? Are there some things you want to bring in at this point, just to hear a little bit from each other where we are in this process that we are together in?
Yeah, and how the groups have gone.
How the groups have gone, of course, yeah.
Is that supporting your going deeper in understanding what it is that we're looking to evoke here between us? Because our aim is to give you as strong an experience of this dimension as possible, so that you can begin to discern where you are in relationship to it, so that you can begin to work with this yourself. Begin to start to hold a space that allows for this kind of emergence, this kind of intersubjective awakening to begin to pop up in your life, in your relationships, in your groups, in your teaching, in how you are, how you show up in the world.
So whoever wants to, just unmute your microphone, and would love to hear.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to go first.
Sure. Hi, Jeff.
I apologize. I haven't been able to make a lot of these sessions, but I've been watching the videos. I've watched all the videos through class 3 at least twice. And just to reflect on your question about how it's been going over this material again, and also how I'm bringing it into life. I found it really helpful to be to be in this class again, even though I haven't been present online, because I'm going back over everything that we covered the first time I went through emergent, and also in sculpting atmospheres, and it keeps crystallizing a little bit more for me. So that's helpful. I have a few focuses, or a couple focuses in life right now that I'm really thinking about this a lot. One is my future role as a leader in this community in Maui that my wife and I are moving back to, and I have an interest in bringing this work to that atmosphere, that arena. I think a lot about group process, and there's different ones I know about, but I'm really interested in emergent dialogue and its potential to I guess in the context of community, to bring us as a group to places that we might not necessarily go with the standard approaches to decision making and group process that I'm aware of.
Is there, if I may interrupt you,
Oh, sure.
anything standing out in your experience with the emergent dialogue process as far as you go through now again? Is there something particular standing out that seems to be for you relevant, important, or in a way that you have a question, or in a way that it's just something that holds your attention?
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably trying to summarize too much there. I guess that is it. I'm really interested in how, in this intentional community setting, the emergent dialogue can bring a group or allow us to go places and create new culture that wasn't possible. It might not be possible if we just follow the old routes, the old well-worn ways. And so it's just something that I guess I'm kind of like, where am I going to go with this? So I'm kind of like in that space of imagining this, how we might use it in this community in the future. So that's sort of standing out for me now. Yeah.
Well, but I think underneath what you're saying is that you've had an experience that suggests that might be so. Mm-hmm. Can you say more about that?
Well, I guess we were just talking about don't know mind. Mm-hmm. And, I actually don't have an experience that's coming to mind at the moment, but there is a freedom that creates. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's as much as I can say right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I could add real quickly. We had our gathering yesterday, and I found it very, very interesting because Peter and I met beforehand, and made a commitment, because it's very easy. I find this work so exciting, and it's very easy to fall into philosophical discussion about it, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. instead of being it. Mm-hmm. And so we mutually decided that we were going to work very hard to not do that. Mm-hmm. And we presented that to the group at the beginning. And I think that there were 7 of us, I think. And we made that commitment at the beginning that we would guard for that tendency. And it's so subtle, because it seems like my experiences is all of a sudden you're there in a philosophical discussion about it, mm-hmm. Without deciding to do that. And then it's more difficult to backtrack. So we tried to really hold that awareness that we would stay in this unknown place, and that we would help each other to stay in this unknown place. And I presented the analogy of like if we were all in this unknown, in this dark room, and we'd have to rely on each other to hold that space, to help each other navigate in the dark. And so it was a fantastic call, because I felt like everyone was holding the awareness of self-correction if we started to veer. And it was a mutual effort that was with our senses, you could feel it. Mm. And we commented on that the body senses were even responding to that commitment that we all made. Mm-hmm. And by the time it was over, we really realized that when we hit that button leave meeting, mm-hmm. that we would not be leaving, All we would be leaving behind was the picture on the screen that told us that we were together in engagement. And when we reached over and touched that button and the picture disappeared, that engagement that we were in wouldn't disappear. So it was very powerful.
Great. Great.
Yeah. No, thank you, Diana. And you really hit also an important point that I think is helpful for all of us to emphasize, that what we are doing here is experiential work, not theoretical work. We need the theoretical work in order to create a support structure in consciousness to know what we are doing. But the real thing is to really look into what we're experiencing and how we are aware that we can come together in a different consciousness as we are meeting. It's a phenomenological work because it's a work where just the fact that there's a field between us that's real. The important point is that we are aware that this is the case. It's not that we have an idea that this is the case, but to create an awareness, a reference point in our consciousness, there's something between us that is a relational field that is alive right now, that holds a gestalt in itself and has its own aliveness and life form, that we develop our inner antenna to see that is a big part of what this work is about. That's why I just love doing this because it's an ongoing training of our sensory capacities to be aware of this subtle reality that is so easy to miss because we are so individuated that we usually we kind of we don't sense that. So part of what we're doing is again and again, oh, wait a moment, there's something, wait a moment, there is something. And then let's talk about what is this something that there is. And not about what is the idea that we have about this something, although they are maybe interesting, but it's much more interesting. Are we experiencing the same thing? Is there something, is there a coherence in your experience and my experience? Because if that's the case, and most of the time this is the case, then it talks to its realness. That you sitting wherever you sit and I sit wherever I am sit, and there's something in this subtle reality between us, mediated by in the internet and computer screens. That wow, what is this something that is alive in between us and that holds a consciousness that is beyond my separate self sense? Just to develop this again and again and again is that's the bloodline of what we're doing here, and everything else, the understanding, they're support structures to hold this. We need the understanding because otherwise it's a very fleeting experience that may, wow, what is this? But you have no idea. But when you develop an understanding of what it is, you create stability of your experience. But the blood is in the experience, not in the idea.
But Thomas, it strikes me as, well, I guess the word would be weird, that we're trying to create this experience that's not an experience, that's, well, I don't know if it's not an experience or if it's creating a new experience. That is at least an element of what's going on. So it's like when Diana was talking about our group, which we had an amazing whatever it was, that then I would remember it at certain times after that, the meeting part of it. And what was left of that it was like remembering something that was not an experience.
That's right. Sure. But our capacity to sense and and cognize that experience, to be able to develop the muscles to be able to, and they're not physical muscles, they're awareness muscles, to be able to be in that trans-individuated space, to sense larger than one's psychological self-sense, and to keep that as an ongoing way of being in the world. That takes practice. I mean, the spiritual experience is always an experience of coming home. Like, I remember. This is closer than close. This is where I belong. This is where I'm more comfortable. It's always that, in whatever form it takes. And this is that too. So you have a sense of, I'm remembering something. I'm recognizing the fact that I am not separate, that we're here, that this is all one process together, that this is, that there isn't, in an ultimate sense, an illusion of separation. And yet to actually live from that takes practice. That's why we do spiritual practice. That's what we're doing here. This is practice, so that we can develop those spiritual muscles, those awareness, that awareness capacity. It's about bringing to life in our lives some of the deepest truths that we've all experienced in our spiritual work. You know, it's great to know that there is oneness, that there is unity, to have had an experience of that. But what does that mean when I am with you and you're with me and we're with a group of people and we're trying to talk about something, or we're trying to do something together? How does that manifest? And that's the importance of this work. It says, you know, instead of just, you know, hey, I've got my groovy experience of oneness. Well, if you have an experience of oneness, it's got to be the same as mine, or else it's not one. And that's the deepest intuition that we have. But so this is building the muscle and the awareness to not just deal with these on an ideational or conceptual basis, and not just having this as one's personal experience, but saying, okay, I am going to develop and work and practice so that I keep dropping this sort of frame of self-reference. I keep dropping it so that I can be with others in a place of radical openness and freedom, as Jeremiah was saying, that allows for something that I'm not steering simply to be emergent. And I'm trusting in that wholeness, in that profound unity, which was an experience that whenever one has had it is the most meaningful experience of one's life. That is I'm going to bring that to our human relationships in the here and now.
I think it's also important to be precise when we say it's not an experience, because when we say it's not an experience, at least that's my understanding of it, and I find it interesting to see if you share this understanding. What we mean is it's more than this experience. This experience is showing something that is beyond the experience. When Elizabeth was talking about the experience of oneness, the oneness is something different than the experience of oneness. And that's important, because otherwise we are just interested in our experience, but that is just something that shows up, and the oneness is there independent of our experience to some degree. But at the same time, that's why I'm saying is it's also important that the experience is showing us something. That's why it's important to also train our experience and say, wait a moment, we not only can experience isolation and individuation and being separate individual, we also can experience something different. And first, can we really experience something different? And then, I assume we do. Is this real? or is this an illusion? Then we can look into this experience. Does it seem to have reality to it, that there's something? And then we can train our sensual capacities and our understanding of what this is, so that this reality, if it is something real, is something that becomes a reference point when we meet each other. So that when I see you and you see me and we come together in this context or in any other context, we are aware of more than we usually aware of. This is higher we, to my understanding, because this higher we is usually not part of what we experience because we are not trained to do so. And then we can discuss if this is new, if this is something emergent. I don't want to go there because otherwise we talk the whole 2 hours about it. But what is important to really see it is our experience also that is the access point that shows us a different reality. And then we can test it together as we are working this together.
I think also when we say it's not an experience, we need the experience in order to validate what you were just pointing to. But the power of, or the culture changing aspect of it, the transformative that is personally and collectively transformative and thereby culture changing, and we're talking about microcultures, is that I can get to the point where even if I'm not feel that I'm like really in this oneness or that there's something really powerful rising between us, I know that it's true. And when there's a reference point through experience that takes one beyond the need to have certain kinds of experiences, then we start to really be able to work with this and have stability and be able to bring it in powerful ways to the different contexts that we're in.
I'd just like to say real quick, Elizabeth, in response to what you just said, for me, having the experience of that and knowing it is what I can hold when I'm with people who don't know about this. Mm-hmm. Because it is real, and often the question has come up, well, how do I do this with other people? Mm-hmm. I think, that what you said is you can't until you can hold that experience and maybe be the only one. Mm-hmm. And that's been my experience, and it's quite powerful. Mm-hmm. But it can't happen unless what you just said, one knows that so deeply.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Do we still have time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit, yes, we do.
Go ahead.
Because I want to tell you about our last session, which was where we ended exactly at that place, where it didn't feel, cozy and safe anymore, because we were using another Zoom stream. It was the stream of the meditation, stream of the one word bearing witness, and this was already out to the people, so people were coming in to try.
Oh no!
Yeah, and we of course it was tearing us apart somehow. We lost track. We lost almost everything. But I think the amazing thing was that we didn't fall apart. We stayed together. We were already always really trying to be to be at the moment. What is now? Are we still together? What can we do? Does it need to feel a certain way to be together, to stay together, to hold formation? It was very, very interesting, and I think we were very, very successful in that.
Awesome.
Because I think because exactly what you said, because of the knowing that that one is there, that it is there, that the space in the in between, the intersubjective subjective is there, no matter how it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was a very, very important experience to go through that whole process.
Cool.
And really sticking together. I don't know, Sibylla, Maura, and Catherine, Andy, maybe you want to add something, but I think we were really successful in that. Even we don't have together so much experience in this emergent dialogue process.
No, it's a very new group.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, yeah, there was something about the fact that we started talking about that phenomenon and sort of talking about the experience that we were experiencing. And then as we were talking about it, somebody else came in. So it, provided this very clear structure, I guess, to some of it maybe felt like an analysis of being in that situation, but then for me, that brought us closer together and closer to our situation.
Mm.
And like you were just saying, like if the whole point of this is to practice it, to bring it into our lives and to bring it into different contexts and bring it into reality, well, certainly being interrupted is part of that. Reminded me of what happened to you guys last week. Hey, it happens. You got to roll with it.
Right.
That's right.
It's interesting when what you said, Maria, made me think of two things. There are two places that people can go that can go off track with this. One is I need to have a certain experience, or else it's not it, and I don't trust then. And the other is saying, well, it's always here. Oh, it's always here, and that not being rooted in anything, in one's own self, in one's own practice, in one's own being. That there isn't a deep resonance there, and both of those will actually blind you to the fact that it is always here, that it is available to us when we drop our preconceptions and are curious and interested and really want to find out what's possible between us. But it's a moving between the desperation to have a certain experience and the casualness of saying that of course we're all one. It's all, I've got that, wrote that down, it's done, which is also not the kind of authentic engagement that makes this alive and makes one an agent for it or a catalyst for it.
I have a question for all of us, if I may. I'm sorry if it's this general, but do you feel, as we are talking right now, that there is something, and I really keep it as general, as we were trying to describe it, between us in this dialogical field? Do you, and just say if it's not, but do you feel there's something that is related to what we're trying to describe as we are talking? And
there is a quality of a something, and I think that part of the dynamic energy of the space is that it's ever shifting, and that there's a part of at least myself that I recognize kind of wants to land somewhere, but that's actually not going to serve. That it's in fact in the difference, that there's a co-arising and an ability to stay open and curious about like what this expression is from this trans individuation, from this more than just a collaboration of selves coming together, but a unique expression that is vivid, multifaceted, and dimensional, and ever shifting, informing the very that we're constantly dancing with.
No, thank you very much. That was very precise, because that's the starting point. The question, is there something? And in the way also you were much more precise than me in describing what this something maybe is about. And as soon as there's something, we can try to together investigate what it is. And then there's a second question that is also important. Is this something relevant or irrelevant for us and for our culture? Because if it's something but it's nice, it doesn't really matter, or if it's something that really makes a difference in the way we come together as humans and the way we can develop our culture, that's a big difference. And my inclination is to say it's important. It is very important. And then if we together have kind of this inclination, yes, it exists, it's real, and it's relevant, then we together can investigate what is it, how is it relevant, and how can we cultivate it. And these three things: is it real? Is it relevant? And if yes, how can we cultivate it? That's what this whole course is about. Mm-hmm. That's basically when we come on the course, all the different topics are variations of these questions, are aspects of these questions, because we are talking about a living reality between us in presence. Not if you have a course about something that you need a particular intellectual understanding or historic understanding or whatever, that's all fair enough. That's a particular kind of course. What we are trying to learn together here right now is a living reality between us as we are talking. So that's why it needs our senses. That's also why it needs our collaboration in that, and say, I'm aware of something. It's this and this. No, I'm not. And no, then let's find out together, because it's an open process. We have to find out its reality or not reality, and then we can talk about what are the aspects of it. How can we understand this? And how can this be something that is important for how we live together as humans?
I appreciated what you said, Karen, about the dynamic quality and the shifting nature of it, because it is we're talking about unfolding life as in this session, that this is life unfolding or a livingness, an aliveness unfolding that is dynamic and that is a process, and learning when it feels like there's a certain kind of force behind it, being able to start to discriminate between the strength of it, things that take it off, that's sort of, sometimes you have an experience that someone says something and then there's a feeling of thud and kind of blankness in the group. It's like, oh, well, what was that? Why did that happen? Or something that creates a quickening. These our capacity to tune in and really discriminate in this space and in terms of its qualities and so forth is part of what you're speaking about. It's like, how do we work it? How do we work this thing? And it's not a thing either. But how do we help it live? How do we give it more and more life? And when I think that the preciousness of its aliveness and the kind of rebound that it has in our own presence and our own sense of awakenedness is a kind of confirmation of the aliveness, the livingness of this unfolding between us. That there's a preciousness to that as life that makes one want to give to it and not to take away from it. But that pulls us out of our comfort zone, which is what interestingly enough that Diana and Maria were saying in your last groups, there was a kind of sounds like some of the comfort zone was taken away to some extent, and to learn how to trust more deeply in the life that we often are cut off from, but that we are, and that this is about a liberation into that together. And how do we work it? And that's it's very thrilling, but it is a bit like not having a net.
Yeah. Because what we're doing is very practical. I was just thinking, what would be a different way of calling what we're doing, and I came up with a course of applied non-separation. And I really think that is a way how to talk about what we're doing, because it's non-separation, applied non-separation in a very concrete dialogical situation, and really investigating first how non-separation is real, tangible real, and how does it work, what does it need, what is its nature, and how can we, in the way you're describing it, nourish it. So we see, wait a moment, I bring something into this space of non-separation, and it kind of brings everything to a halt, or it kind of dampens the whole thing, or all of a sudden it really highlights, someone brings something in, and it's really an explosion of recognition of something that seems to be very relevant. And to see that this is all completely dependent on everyone's intervention. And the intervention, we only can really mold this intervention or find the right way how to do this when this shared space of non-separation is alive as a reference point in my consciousness. Because otherwise, if I don't have a reference point, if the only reference point is my self-centeredness, I just have no clue what to do. I just don't know. But at the point where there's some reference point, wow, there's something alive between us, I do have a reference point how to support this. So that's why always the starting place of what we try to do is to create these reference points between all of us, so that that we have a lifeline, how to go further. Because if we don't have it, usually nothing comes together. Everyone is just in his or her, in my own world, and it seems to be kind of a conversation, but basically we are in our separate worlds. But as soon as we establish a culture where these reference points become something shared, everything is possible.
This reference point, Tom, that when you asked this question a while ago, and Karen answered it, that kind of it seemed that the way I would describe it completed a circuit. So in that moment, there was a beyond time and space thing that happened, and what then I was left with is immediately trusting that whatever Karen was going to say was exactly what I was not. Well, it would be perfect, and that I didn't need to say it. It was fine that she said it, and that seems so then that answers the question of, is this something valuable for us as whatever we are? I would say that answers the question for me. It's like, that's not only valuable, that's really critical.
Yeah, I fully agree.
I want to speak to what you were saying at the beginning, or when you started off by saying it's like the completion of a circuit. I mean, part of the way this process works, and you could feel it. I mean, there was something that when Thomas asked the question and Karen responded, and then we both responded, that there was a momentum building in that, and there's a kind of when someone responds and you can feel the energy being released in it, to respond with that aim, respond from that stream of energy, that stream, without pre-thinking, without saying, well, no, that was interesting, and let me think about how that works, but to allow that the force of that energy to hit you into response. And then there's what can begin to develop is a real creative momentum, a co-creative momentum that is working through the same kind of motive force, you could say. In some ways it's like the dance form of contact improv, where it's like the dancer's movement and body moving into another, or touching into another, creates another movement, and no one is creating the dance, but everyone is creating the dance. But it's about a kind of before thought willingness to leap into the energy that is being opened up, and allowing oneself to be moved by that and give from that, and then you can see that there's not there's something a process of enlivenment that happens with this, that is that isn't emotional, but it is synergistic, if that makes sense.
But you can't, you can dance together with both of you dancing, but you can't have both of you talking. And that, so when you're using a talking rather than dancing type of interaction between all of us, then a different thing is called into. It seems that we need, that there's a different dynamic, and that as you were talking, Elizabeth, and I'm sitting here going, oh, but I want to say this and this, it occurred to me that I can't talk at the same time you're talking. So then there's this, well, then I have to be, I have to be inside of you talking. Because there's just one person talking. Yeah.
It's interesting because I would phrase it slightly different. What we have to do, and your observation is very precise. When you dance, basically both move. And when you talk, it's one talking and the other not, and then the other and the one not. I would say the way you have to dance in a different way. Because the nature of this dance is that it does not work if we talk all at the same time. It just doesn't work. So how do we dance if basically there's always one and one and one? And when is it right, appropriate for me to come in? And when it is right to wait? But it's the dance that's showing me the rightness, the appropriateness. So to the degree that I'm connected to our shared dance, I have a chance to find the right way. And of course, there's always kind of there's friction, and it always has to work itself out. But the key that makes it possible is, again, the reference point of the shared dance of our dialogical process that wants to go somewhere, that wants to unfold somewhere, where people, if it's only me and Elizabeth talking, there's something wrong. So if it's only you and me talking, there's something wrong. At the same time, it's okay that Elizabeth and me are in a kind of also in a lead position here somewhere. Catalyzing. So it's an ongoing collective finding out, failing and finding out, and not failing and finding out. And in that, something is unfolding. And by the way, we are already in the middle of the topic of our day, which is process consciousness. Maybe we call it dance consciousness.
One thing I just wanted to I just wanted to add the sense of in this kind of metaphor. I think it's easy to put an emphasis or under appreciation on the act of listening, as if that's somehow less participation. And even thinking about the image of dancing, or like the contact improv, it's like one person might be seemingly generating some force or some energy in some kind of direction, and yet the other person, it only works if the other person is kind of responding to that. Even if they're not generating it themselves, they're still very actively engaged.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. Because we're not looking at who is it that's saying the best stuff. What we're talking about is the dance, is the whole conversation, is the aliveness and inquiry and exploration that we can do together. And I think that's part of when Susan said, when Karen said what she said, it was said. It didn't. No one needed to say, yeah, and I agree with that, and da-da-da-da, because it was said. And that it doesn't need to be repeated. Maybe sometimes it bears repeating, or things need to be repeated. But it's for the sake of the dance, or the sake of the whole thing itself, the conversation itself, the dialogue itself, the intersubjective engagement itself, not because of, I want to be heard.
That's the different reference point. Because if all of us come from the reference point, I want to be heard, we have a very different conversation. That's why it's important that we are aware of this shared space, because if we are not aware of it, I don't have any other reference point than me, really. But in the moment I have this as a living reality in my consciousness, something is possible. And that, again, I find is the key for this process consciousness. It's and this is important, a pre-thought awareness of its potential right now. That's the mastery of it, that there's some intuitive recognition of what's the next step. Like in a dance, you have this pre-thought next step that you don't think about your next step when you're dancing. Otherwise, the dance is basically already over in the moment you start to think what should be my next step. And there's a pre-thought intuitive recognition where this process, our dialogue right now wants to go. And this is a dance, and it's also a collective finding out. And it's also fair enough to, okay, no, this was not, let's go here. It's self-correcting, but there's an unfolding. And to the degree that every one of us is very awake to the wholeness of this dialogical field, our capacity to respond to the real potential becomes bigger and bigger. If we are not aware of it, we have no chance to really support it. If we are fully aware of it as an ideal, there's an unbelievable potential to really respond to the highest potential of what's possible between us right now. Nobody of us has an idea what it is. It shows itself. It's my capacity. That's where the listening comes in. It's my capacity to listen and be aware what the moment, in this moment, the whole of our process shows me what maybe my contribution can be, or maybe my contribution is just to hold back. And in this, we find a dance where it is capable of showing us. And this is a very intuitive capacity that we are training right now. And there is a mastery, and there is a way to develop mastery in this. And this is, again, part of what this course is about.
It also goes to what you were both speaking of earlier, and that engagement is I guess, for lack of a better word, essential. That it is in the relationships, it is in the dynamic tensions, it's in the intuitive expression, it's in the hesitation and leaping anyway. And it's doing that over and over and over and over again. Not so you can get good at something, but that from that there becomes an expanded capacity to almost withstand and be in the energetic space of it more and more and more, which is very different from the confined, boundaried parts of the individual selves that we have been. You know, it has we've defined these parameters of separation that aren't actually real, but have been the story. And now we have to experience the other stories that are possible. And in order to do that, there's actually, like, it, you know, in our group, I brought up the sense of this larger nervous system, you know, that we're nervous systems within nervous systems within nervous systems, and that each relationship expands the capacity and the potential, so more and more and more is possible. And that's kind of where the friction and the engagement allows that curiosity and possibility to be more and more available. And then everybody's unique expression of that, which is ever shifting and changing, again informs it more. And so it's like, oh, you know, Susan can say something and it's like, it's recognizable, and something opens up and blooms in the space. And then somebody else contributes something, and there's a flow, like a stream, and you follow that. And or there's a breeze, and somebody says something and the breeze informs and opens up. And so that's constantly shifting in the space.
Thomas, you're muted.
Okay, we had some noise outside the house here. That's great. That's really great what you're saying. There's one emphasis I would like to make, because we used so much the comparison with the dance, and you were talking about this unfolding energy between us as one dance. That is true for both the dance and this form of dialogue. There's something specific in the dialogue, because dialogue is dialogue, and the dialogue is language in this sense of language. That meaning, the unfolding of meaning, has a certain weight in the dialogue that's different. I'm not saying that in a dance there's no meaning, but there's a particular unfolding of meaning in the use of language, of human language, that has its own part in it. So it has this energetic unfolding, but it has also this collective unfolding of meaning that is part of the power, and also part of the wonder, the miracle for me always in doing this dialogue, because there's an intelligence opening up, and things are kind of showing itself that nobody, at least not I, have access to otherwise. It's really collaborative intelligence that's showing itself and meaning that's finding itself. And the art of doing this is to be open for this. It's nothing. We were talking last time about the wu-wei character of what we're doing. This is very much this wu-wei. It's not a whole passive.
I don't think we use that term, but we were talking about it anyway. So maybe you want to explain that.
I thought we did talk to you. I think we did.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Okay, we have some yeses and some
Anyway, I explained wu-wei comes from this Taoist Chinese expression of the doing of not doing. And what it means, it's not an egoic form of doing, but it's a doing where surrendering and acting is the same thing. You're aware of something, you're not holding passive back, but it's also not I do this, but it's basically surrendering to something that we collectively become aware of and holding it with our individual contribution in this. So that's, and in this, the process, and in this case here, the process of dialogue can find itself. I really use consciously this language. It sounds a little odd. The dialogue can find itself through us. I consciously change the subject here, and the subject is not me finding or creating something, but the subject is the whole. And I allow myself to be of servant for this whole to find itself. I really change the subject in the sentence this way because it shows something that I find very important, because I have to be really there for something that is bigger than myself. And if we find ourselves in our personal relationship holding this together, this can happen. That's the emergence. That's also part of why we call this emergent dialogue, because then really something is emergent that has a higher V quality that is beyond us, and that is a process that's ongoingly going somewhere.
I have an interesting sense of the process and the energy process that's going on between us. And then when you say about the dialogue, and I'm thinking that, you know, the spoken word that's coming out is part of the whole process that's happening. Mm-hmm. Because the spoken word is a limited thing in a way. I mean, we've got a shared vocabulary that doesn't cover everything that we experience. And I just find it an interesting feeling at the moment to when I consider what I'm experiencing from the whole, and then the words that wants to emerge, irrelevant from who, to trigger little bits in different directions. Yeah, just wanted to say that.
No, I agree with you, Barbara. But because you're also emphasizing the limitations of language, I also would emphasize the power of language. Yeah. Because just to say very straight, language and dialogue, I also would call applied magic. The fact that I, for example, use the word sun in all of our contact in a consciousness, something that's related to the sun shows up. I just have to use this word, sun. You haven't thought about the sun a second ago, but me using the word magically opens up this consciousness in all of us. And we do this with we create worlds between us just through the use of language ongoingly. That's what we're doing here on screen. We're sitting thousands and thousands of miles apart, and we're creating a shared world between us just by using language. That's pretty magical to me, and to honor also the power of language to to create and weave together the shared worlds that are opening up as we are dialoguing and create meaning that is really meaning in sense that is meaningful to us. I feel that what we are doing is deeply meaningful. Why do I feel that way? Because we are sharing something in language that is able to transport something that creates meaning between us. That's pretty magic to me.
Yeah, I'm very much with you when you say creating something in language that transports a meaning within us, within our field.
It's pretty powerful, and I think it's also something to honor, but because that's a unique human gift. As far as I know, we are the only species really using language in this way, and maybe dolphins do. I don't know, but that's just to honor this and to see the art of language that we are using in dialogue here, and how we're creating worlds of meaning and beauty that we are doing here right now, sitting on different parts of this planet and sharing, creating worlds in this way that at least have deep meaning for me, not only in this situation that we are here together, they hold meaning for my whole life. Everything that's really lands here doesn't leave me. It holds. That's wow. That's quite something.
So, Tom, could we say that in the process of language articulating meaning, it creates meaning?
Yeah. Or to put it another way, language is the art of articulating meaning. We as a species learn to use our lips and our tongues and we learn it through hundreds of thousands of years to use this, which is basically just sound and the vibration of air, and just transmitted through electromagnetic waves, meaning.
It's unbelievable.
It started somewhere at a campfire 200,000 years ago, I guess. That we started to create meaning that's more than I'm afraid or I hate you or whatever. That we started to develop this capacity of language in a way that it gets more and more refined. So language itself is the art of expressing meaning. Yeah.
But in that process, doesn't it also create new meaning?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. We create whole new worlds this way.
Yes.
That just makes me think of this sense of meaningfulness, not necessarily as our language is kind of, the purpose of it is creating or trying to articulate some kind of fixed structures. But when I think about specifically in kind of conversations of this nature, that the meaningfulness is almost the capacity to, we're talking about new worlds, like this kind of opening of possibility, that somehow what feels most meaningful isn't standing back and looking at like, oh, this thing is meaningful, but the sense of being pulled into more possibility that I wasn't aware of before.
Yeah. That's my ongoing experience in these dialogues, that new possibilities opening up that I haven't been aware of, and I find myself ongoing in the process of finding out together, and then having a dialogue. Do you feel the same way? How do you understand what's going on? And in that sense, we're building, and it's always going somewhere. Sometimes it's a bumpy road, sometimes it's not a bumpy road, but altogether it creates something that at least for me, I find very meaningful, very exciting, and it feels like completely opening new worlds, how we can be together as humans.
Let's be together as humans in a slightly different configuration. We thought we
She
should.
was preparing the groups.
Yeah. Let's break into small groups, and I think that what we would like you to focus on in your group, ask the question: how is life unfolding between us now? Which is, yeah, how is life unfolding between us now? And for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about it and see where we go further. Okay?
and then that's okay. That we accept that fact that, oh, this is fuzzy and I don't really know how to do this, and even let go of that.
Right. I agree.
I'm just thinking about how maybe the heart of process consciousness is the heart, and bringing this aspect of the collective heart. It kind of mirrors, I guess, I think what we experienced, where when we were really in the moment, in the now, the idea of the heart came up, and the feeling or sensing from that space really came up, and finding it collectively. This is what I felt, anyways. And then it's so easy to get distracted from that present awareness and that collective heart when we get lost in analysis or describing what's happening versus actually, how do we say it? Instead of talking about it, doing it as we talk versus talking about it.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction. Doing it as we talk rather than talking about it.
Yeah. I really want to do it as we talk, and I feel that's so essential, and that the heart, the collective heart rising is such a big part of that.
One thing I wanted to say about fuzziness or not fuzziness or whatever it is, and I think what you were saying about having a big heart for this and for each other in this, is that it's really great not to personalize anything that happens. You know, it's really helpful not to personalize anything that happens. It is an experiment, and to say, oh, I didn't do this, or I was fuzzy, or my heart was like not there, or I don't know, or I don't think I did it right. It's like we're all in this together, and it's you know, we all want to give to this, which is why we're here, which is beautiful, and we all have an enormous amount of learning to do. It's useful to you know, bring it, like as you said, as you did, Virginia, just to kind of bring it out into the center and go, so this is happening with me, you know, what's that mean? Or this is arising at this moment. What is it? What is this? Rather than getting stuck on it in oneself.
I'm just looking around this little Zoom field and realizing that I'm experiencing everyone differently than I was aware of experiencing before, that somehow what Virginia gave voice to has in the process of transforming my experience of this group. It's a little bit scary. Just sort of a heart opening to each nodule. Not that you're just a nodule, guys. It's just it just feels different.
It's true. maybe we can use this also as our point where we come to closure here. Good to see you all.
Enjoy your groups.
Yeah.
And have a wonderful holiday. We'll see you after the new year.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. Have a wonderful holiday.
Bye.
Yeah, practice with your family.
Yep, then it's for real.
Yeah, and then it's really real.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. Great.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Mm.